Good day, everyone. Welcome to Real Conservative News. I'm your host, Nathaniel Rajkumar. Please stay with me for the next 10 to 15 minutes. It isn't long as I highlight the latest news events and provide commentary for February 10th, 2026 regarding local, regional, and international security, political, and social issues. Starting off locally here in Trinidad and Tobago, the IMF acknowledges TNT government's strides in advancing reforms and economic diversification. The discussions provided a comprehensive opportunity to review recent macroeconomic developments, the medium-term outlook, and the government's ongoing reform agenda. They also allowed the IMF staff team to observe that strengthened regional and international engagement, along with opportunities linked to developments in Venezuela, is generating a positive momentum for Trinidad and Tobago and increased interest from global investors. It is the truth though, right? All of a sudden we are seeing a lot of different companies and countries interested in investing here in Trinidad and Tobago as well. Nevertheless, my response was, I wonder if the IMF is responsible for influencing the Prime Minister into betraying the population by increasing fines, fees, and introducing new taxes, when she clearly stated no new taxes would have been imposed. How many times will the IMF suggest imposing of taxes to supposedly stimulate economies or recover economies, even though it causes an impoverished population to lose even more purchasing power? Madam Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar, you're making the same mistake A.N.R. Robinson made in the 80s. And just like with the NAR, it will result in a landslide defeat in the 2030 elections. But does it really matter to you? Because it seems as though you are ready to retire. So maybe that's why you are just behaving in this way. We all know the PNM. We all know the PNM left TNT in a bankrupt state. And their members even had the audacity to ask the new government, we're going to get money to do all that. So when the PNM patriots are trying to say, oh no, the PNM left the country in a good state, everyone knew we were heading for an economic collapse. And that's why most likely Rowley decided to resign for no reason and put Stuart Young as the new prime minister in order to call the elections, because they knew most likely they were going to lose. And therefore he didn't want to end up being remembered as the man that lost an election. Nevertheless, you should have adopted the Republicans, the American Republicans' capitalist style of governance, which promotes lower taxes and fewer regulations. You admire the Trump administration so much, Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar, and yet you are still following and adopting the Democrats' socialist type of policies, which is higher taxes, more regulations, more control by the government instead of we the people. I still hope and pray that Kamala Persad-Bissessar will wake up soon and end these PNM policies. And yes, people, those are PNM policies, as I said. Higher taxes, higher fines, higher fees, removing subsidies that usually serve as a buffer to protect the purchasing power of the middle and working class citizens in a country. The following is an opinion letter that was written to the Trinidad Express by a concerned citizen. But that is only a portion of the letter though. The individual started off by saying, unelected senators are distorting democracy. The recent defeat of the Zones of Special Operations ZOSO bill in the Senate has done more than derail proposed crime-fighting legislation. It has also exposed a deep and dangerous flaw at the heart of Trinidad and Tobago's democratic architecture, one that many citizens are now beginning to fully grasp. The bill passed the House of Representatives, the only chamber whose members are directly elected by the people, correct? Yet it failed in the Senate largely because the bloc, commonly referred to as independent senators, withheld their support. The immediate public response has been telling. Calls for an extension of the state of emergency have grown louder, not because citizens relish emergency powers, but because an unelected group has blocked what was meant to be the legislative alternative. Now, the thing about it is, those calls are most likely coming from the UNC base, because the rest of us understand the fact that you cannot govern a nation using an SOE. How long you will keep individuals being detained without a right to a trial? Or even because you cannot even arrest them normally, because as soon as the SOE ended, you had to end up releasing them back into the public population, and that's because you did not have sufficient evidence in the first place. My response, besides that, before I go to my response, quickly, let me just say, individuals are saying, well, you know, the Constitution, you can't blame the PNM for that. Who was in office when the Constitution was written? It was the PNM people. My response, senators should be elected by the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Fully agree with that. Just like they're elected in the USA, citizens should also be able to vote for the president of our nation, even though he or she only serves a ceremonial role. We're supposed to still choose that individual. Having said that, one of the main threats to our democracy right now is Roger Alexander, Minister of Homeland Security, who continues to promote policies which will infringe upon the constitutional rights of we the people, including the UNC Basin. And yet the Prime Minister, Kamla Persad-Bissessar, continues to remain silent. UNC is quickly adopting all of Rowley and PNM's autocratic types of laws and policies. Having said that, I am also thankful in this case that the so-called independent senators voted against the ZOSO law because the corrupt TTPS cannot be trusted to possess such extreme powers. They were appointed by a former member of the PNM who preached the PNM gospel until she became president. So I'm quite sure that they are closer allies to the opposition than the ruling government. Nevertheless, in this case, I'm thankful that they stood their ground. Another opinion-based letter was sent into the Trinidad Express. The person started off saying, I am so bitterly disappointed in this once great politician who was supposed to lift women in every sphere in private and public life with a care and consideration, integrity, and professionalism. Of course, the person is referring to Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar. I'm also disappointed as well. My response, Kamla is quickly adopting the same type of autocratic style of leadership, which she has condemned Rowley of this behavior for the past 10 years. Her online base are no different to PNM patriots either. They're giving her the impression that the mass population is overlooking her broken promises and also her refusal to hold Roger Alexander accountable for his continued disturbing public statements. I hope and pray that she wakes up before it's too late. You cannot, Prime Minister, you cannot promise a population that you won't place the financial burden of recovering TNT's economy on our shoulders in order to win the election and then turn around and double fines, fees, and even introduce new taxes. You have broken the trust of the people, Madam Prime Minister. This is your quote for many years now. You hear lie? That is lie. Those were your words, and yet you're now behaving just like Rowley and his merry men. The St. Vincent and the Grenadines Minister of Tourism and Parliamentary Representative for North Leeward, Dr. Kishore Shalom, has promised to meet with representatives of Reno regarding the Richmond Quarry project. Addressing residents at the same community meeting, Dr. Shalom said that a comprehensive assessment of the project must be conducted before any further decisions are made. He assured constituents that their concerns will be taken into account as part of the evaluation process. Residents raised several issues during the meeting, which both ministers said will be addressed in due course. They also indicated that Budget 2026 will provide further details on government plans and initiatives moving forward.
In fact, we have to do a comprehensive assessment of Richmond and to see how we could actually capitalize on what is over there, all the resources over there. So, and that includes the quarry project that is over there. And we said it before that we are going to do a comprehensive assessment of that quarry. We are going to engage Mr. Reno, right, and get his cooperation on how we can move forward with that. Because we know it is still a troubling issue for people of fit use and other areas in North Leeward. So we are going to address that head on. Also, and I'll tell you what, it is such, when you talk about short-sighted, the previous government, in that you establish a quarry day in a place where there's so much potential for tourism. And I'll speak more on that at another point. But we haven't given up on Richmond, whether it is farming land, Richmond as a tourist site. We are going to work on for settlement as well. And I'll engage the Minister of Housing and Land Management.
Upgrades in the aviation sector. Advancement continues in Guyana. Are set to open Guyana's hinterland to the global economy, thus providing communities with greater access to services and economic opportunities. This is according to Member of Parliament Lennox Schumann, who was at the time making his contribution to the 2026 National Budget debate. Senator Professor Floyd Morris, opposition spokesman on housing and sustainable living in Jamaica, has given notice that he plans to move a motion to effect changes to how the National Housing Trust is being operated at the next sitting of the Senate. Morris gave notice during Friday's sitting of the Senate, noting that the NHT is this year celebrating 50 years in existence. A little news coming out from Jamaica. I try to highlight issues taking place throughout the Caribbean, of course, not just international news and locally here in Trinidad and Tobago. Anyone wants me to highlight topics from their respective islands, whether it be Barbados and so forth, can send me a link of the news pages from those islands. Cuban aviation officials have warned airlines that there isn't enough fuel for airplanes to refuel on the island. The latest step in its moves to ration energy as the Trump administration cuts the Caribbean nation off from its fuel resources. My response, and of course, conservatives will not agree with me when it pertains to this. If Trump isn't going to take decisive and effective action against the communists in Cuba and Venezuela, then he should remove all sanctions and allow the citizens to at least regain some level of normalcy in their lives. These are small islands. These are not nations like Russia and China that you can place sanctions on. When you place sanctions on these countries, their economies collapse. This economic pressure has proven to be ineffective when attempting to persuade these autocratic leaders to restore democracy in their respective countries. This has been happening for decades now, people, and nothing has changed. So why continue to use that strategy? No, people, I'm not switching to the radical left type of politics, but I'm simply acknowledging the facts. Donald Trump, take action or stop playing these diplomatic games. These are art of the deal games. It's not even working in Iran either. You need to take action. International news now. A building collapsed onto its residents in the city of Tripoli in northern Lebanon, leaving several people trapped at the site. That's all the information for that thus far. I hope and pray that everyone is rescued and they are found alive in Jesus' name. Closing off now with the interesting facts segment. Canadian researchers have reached a groundbreaking milestone in medical technology with the creation of a rice-sized magnetic soft robot designed to break kidney stones, yes, people, without the need of surgery. This tiny device is engineered to be highly flexible and can be controlled externally using magnetic fields, allowing it to navigate the complex and narrow pathways of the human urinary system. By reaching the stone directly, the robot can deliver targeted force to break it into smaller passable fragments, offering a far less invasive alternative to traditional surgical methods. This, people, is something really important that I hope can be utilized by hospitals, even here in Trinidad and Tobago, and the rest of the world by extension. Folks, that brings us to the end of today's news report. Thanks again to everyone who continues to support my content. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stay blessed and stay safe, most of all. In Jesus' name.